Hey everyone, welcome to this week's live Force Friday with me, Mike Mattesi, and with Swenley. How's it going, Swenley?
Good, excited. I see a lot of excitement in the chat also. I think this is a good topic for us to discuss.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty challenging for artists in general to not only gain control of their schedule, but understand how to manage it. And what do you do every day? Like, how do you practice and get better and keep moving forward and building upon prior successes. So Swenley and I today will be sharing with all of you some tips and tricks around scheduling and controlling your time, all the way down to daily warm-ups, which is one of the main topics, obviously, of today. And then we're also going to share with you some books that we've both read and what we think about them. And also just, I haven't even talked to Swenley about this yet. We'll find out today, like, what does his routine look like? What does my routine look like? What do we do, individually, and share that with you. And I'd love to hear from you guys as well. Where are your struggles in doing warm-ups and what kind of warm-ups and your schedule? The schedule is a really big component of this whole daily warm-up thing. So we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to head back here to Photoshop. We've got our daily warm-up art here. I guess before I get started, because I've been doing such a bad job of this, I want to remind everyone that we had this whole 150 likes. This is bumped up. We used to do that because you guys have blown through that number, of course. So if we break 200 likes, we do have a prize. So let's see if we can actually get past that today. That would be awesome. And also keep in mind that we do have now, what is it called again? It's like these stickers, right? So if you go below the chat, we do have this whole sticker system there. If you want to call out something that somebody said, give them a pat on the back. There's a whole bunch of these fun stickers that are right under the chat box at the bottom. So go check that out. And otherwise, let's get started. So, let's get down here. So the first thing I want to talk about is schedule. It's one thing to say, you know what, I want to figure out what my warm-ups are, but if you don't know how to manage your time, then that's not going to happen. I think it's actually, in fact, I have to say, I think it's probably the bigger and more important conversation today. Artists in general are notorious for not controlling their time, And one of the questions I get asked often, because I guess I complain about this enough for everyone to be aware just how busy I am, because everyone asks me, how do you get so much work done? You've got these books going, you're teaching all these people, and then you go and lecture and, travel and so on and so on. And the secret to all of this is my calendar, is that I control my time through my calendar. I teach, 40 plus people a week, plus there's the premium members. Plus, we're working on 2 books that we're in contract under right now and a potential third one. Plus, I don't think I've mentioned this here, but I'm going to be moving soon. So I have a house that's being built and I'm like trying to manage my time with that also, right? It's just a lot of stuff going on. And the only way I could survive through any of that is to control my time. And the way I control my time is through Google Calendar. I have my calendar open every day. I stare at it literally every day in between every meeting. Yeah, there you go. Frag-a-boom. Huge fan. Thank you for your book. Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thanks for buying the comment there. It's very funny. Yeah, thanks, Dan Fraga. So my Google Calendar drives my life. It really does. I don't know if that's good or bad. Sometimes I think it's my nemesis, quite frankly. I literally have to put on there, like, here's my free time. Saturday from this time to this time is when I'm doing nothing. So I have I have time to do whatever I want to do with my time, right? If I did not do that, it would be impossible. My life would be upside down and just full of chaos, So it kind of goes to a hierarchical situation too, which is the micro and macro of time management, right? Comes down to, what are you doing within every minute of every day and every hour, to, looking at the calendar and saying, I need to also think ahead. And I struggle with this too. I think as good as I am at controlling my time, there's got to be sort of long-term goals as well. Those are the harder ones for me. I'm good at the week to week and day to day. I control the week really well. It's the month to month that gets really tough. Like we have books that we're writing on. Like I said, I'm on contract for 2 books right now, 2 new force books. And it's like, okay, this book is due, let's say the end of next summer. I should be backtracking out of that and saying, all right, I need X amount of hours of every week to know that I'm going to get there to that time. I know I have to do that. I haven't done it yet. I know I have to do that. I have to sit down and do it. What I also don't do, which I know I should do, is have time every week to schedule the schedule. So believe it or not, I should put an hour aside, maybe every Sunday night, to look at my week, because sometimes students cancel a mentorship meeting and I have to reorganize people. I kind of do that on the fly during the week. It'd be a lot more less anxious, right? Having less anxiety around moving all that stuff around and control that and go, you know what, once a week I'm going to do that. Same thing with premium members I do recordings for. I kind of do that wherever I can fit it in when I have free time. I really should have like maybe 2 hours slotted every week where I know that's when I'm going to hit it. Maybe like Tuesdays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays, right? I'm aware of that. It's something I need to work on and get there in the calendar. Anyway, the short of it is you really do need to manage your time on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and even an annual basis. You know, I think when you really start gaining success and control over your calendar, you're like, where am I going to be in a year? Where do I want to be in 5 years? Those could be really big and loose, but they're helpful, you know, to have these long-term goals, to know what you're after. So when you're down in your day to day, and sometimes that time is really frustrating, right? Or you're having a really difficult day, you know, I'm doing this right now because I want to be in this certain place in 5 years, right? Really, really, really important to have these bigger overarching goals to motivate you, you know, to keep you driven. If they get too far out, I know I hear from a lot of artists, oh, if it's too far out, well, I'm not motivated. It could do the opposite too. Like it's so far away, it's not real, right? It's not real to me. But if you work from the far out and you work your way all the way back, hopefully finally you have a calendar and a whole system that motivates you not only in the day, but for that 5-year goal or even 10-year goal. You have any thoughts on any of this, Winley?
Yeah, very interesting, Mike. I think indeed, like I remember when I was younger, I didn't care about making a planning at all. But as I grew older and started working professionally, like it became a necessity, you know. And I think it's like it's just the same as managing your finances, you know. Like we all have, like time is the currency of life. If you look at it, you know, everything that you want to do in life costs time, and we each have a budget of 24 hours a day. So managing it is just like managing money. It becomes like a mathematical equation in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what's interesting is yeah, if there's one thing that we all have the same of is minutes in a day, right? That's one thing that is constant across every human being on this planet. And it comes down to what do you do with that time? You know, how do you make use of it? And I would agree with you. The younger you are, usually the less in control of it you are. You know, when you're in school, other people are controlling it. School's controlling it. Your parents are controlling it. And then all of a sudden you're done. You go to college and you have more control. Like, am I going to show up for class on time? How much time am I going to give myself for homework? Right? Life changes like dramatically, you know, from how dependent you were to independent until you're out of school. And then you're fully independent. Like, what are you doing with your time? You know, and it's totally up to you. I know this sounds really corny, but it always makes it reminds me of this line in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf says something like, you know, it's what you do with your time that matters most, right? Like that's not the exact words, but he says something like that. And that line always sticks with me. I can almost hear him say that because it's super important as to what you do with it. What one person does with 5 minutes could be drastically different with what somebody else does in 5 minutes. And I feel like I'm always aware that if I want some drastic change, I want to really change something, it could literally be 2 minutes away. It could be a post that I put up. It could be a phone call, right? Something massive can change within a minute or two, you know, and that I like knowing that. I do like knowing that's up to me, you know, that I could do that. Or do I like the way things are? You know, I'm just working through my days right now. I'm not looking for any kind of massive like earthquake or anything, but that can happen, and you can make that happen. So never think you're stuck, I guess is what I'm getting at here. Never really think you're stuck, and be aware that the thing that you have that's the most precious to you over anything else on this whole planet is your time, because it's all limited. It's limited for every one of us. You only have a certain amount of it. Try to make the most of it. I'm not trying to stress anyone out here with it either, but be aware it's yours. What are you going to do with your time, right? It could be anything. So be aware of the control that you have over that, okay? There was something here in the chat I wanted to answer. So Khan said, knowing what the most important fundamentals to work on for each individual discipline, for example, for backgrounds, etc. Should I still work on all fundamentals or focus? Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a little, Subcons. This is a great question. How does one avoid procrastinating? That's a great question. You know, I just read an article last week. It said, why do entrepreneurs procrastinate? So I kind of skimmed through the article, and the answer was, typically when someone procrastinates, it's fear that causes procrastination. It's not laziness, right? Normally you think someone procrastinates because they're lazy. It's usually because you're scared of something. And I think artists usually procrastinate because they're scared to fail, which is pretty normal. It could be an entrepreneur, an artist. I don't think it matters what discipline you're in, but usually what stops you from doing something is because there's something you're scared of. So my suggestion is, if you're procrastinating, try to go figure out why you're not doing this thing that you think you should be doing. It's usually something you're afraid of, you know?
Yeah.
And be aware there's nothing to be afraid of, you know? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good one indeed, about procrastination and fear. And one of the best antidotes I found to that lately is just inspiration. You know, if you can get yourself inspired, I mean, that beats procrastination, laziness, even tiredness. You know, it's like kind of like charging your batteries. So if you just find out what inspires you and just invest time in that, again, it's time investment. You have to be intentional in keeping yourself inspired, you know, then you just want to draw every day, all the time.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. So Subcon says, yeah, I struggle with planning long-term goals. I want to, but I get lost in trying to plan that far ahead. I agree. I think most of us do. Where's Mritunjay? Yes. So sorry for not mentioning this. Mritunjay is not here today. He will be back with us next week. He has some personal things that he's dealing with this weekend. He will be back. It's not like we got rid of Mritunjay. Yeah, he's not going anywhere, believe me. He will be back. I love that quote, time is the currency of life. I agree. I think that is an amazing quote. He's still on he's still on the team. He's back and forth with family things, exactly. Your time is indeed precious. Procrastination is not something to avoid because it is a solution found by your brain. It could be both, don't you think? Yeah, so again, procrastination, like I said, my you know, cheap street psychology is procrastination is fear. So check it out. Okay, let's see. All my psychology, by the way, I don't have a degree in it. It's street psychology. Excuse me. All right, so let's go on to our next slide. So the goal here before we leave this is time management, small ideas to all the way and the big ideas. Try to find things that inspire you. One thing I've always read about this management thing as well in goal setting is you want something that's inspiring, but that you think is obtainable. You know, lots of times we come up with stuff that's so crazy that our brain doesn't believe it is possible, and then you usually don't act on that either. For me, on a personal note, I usually like to have one thing that is crazy. I like the lottery ticket. That lottery ticket's been many different things in my life. At one point, the lottery ticket was trying to write books, you know, and that's something that happened, you know. So I like having the one thing that's like, man, that'd be amazing. Like, I don't know if I can get that, but some part of me thinks it's possible. I like having that one lottery ticket goal. It just kind of inspires me outside of the things I'm working on normally. Okay, let's see. So I call it being your own producer, this whole thing of time. Some of you may not be aware of this, some are. Fist bump from Subcons. Yeah, we're cranking with the tickets today. And Angel 3D Arts, thank you very much. Man, you guys are killing it today. Thank you so much. All this, like I said, it just comes back to us, you know, financially with helping create these videos for you guys. So I really appreciate any kind of contribution. Thank you. Most of you may not be aware of what an art career is and what they are and what the different names of the roles are. So a producer in video games, comics, animation, producer is the person whose job it is to control time and money. Sometimes a producer actually will even have creative input. Okay, depends on the company and what their, what responsibilities they give to the producer. Like in the film industry, live action, you have producers, executive producers. They usually have a lot of say. Sometimes they're just people who are helping finance the movie. But I bring up this note here of be your own producer, meaning you got to control your time and your budget, yourself. Now, and it says, respect yourself. Respect yourself more than anything else because it is your time. And what I mean by this is when you're at home by yourself and you're trying to be your own producer, and I've been here, it is so easy to disrespect your own time, right? Because you could say, I'm supposed to get up, and I told myself I'm going to draw from 9 till 12 in the morning, and you get up and now it's 10 o'clock, you haven't gotten out of bed yet, you're like playing games on your phone, you're watching TV, it's 10:30, you get up, have breakfast, make yourself some eggs, it's 11 o'clock, right? You sit down, you finally draw for like 45 minutes, it's 12 o'clock, and you invited one of your friends to come over at 12:30 and play Xbox, right? Boom, it's gone. Morning's gone. You didn't draw that day, right? That does not work, obviously, right? And guess what? The sun goes down, you have another shot, right? You're going to get up again at 9 o'clock and have the same opportunity. So every day is a new opportunity, right? To try to get on track. But what I'm trying to share with you is you really got to respect your own rules and your own time. It is so easy to steamroll right over it and not care. It only matters if you make it matter, right? Now, I did this other, I drew here this little character drawing, and you can see at the bottom, it says 9 to 12 or 7 to 12 a.m. So what's awesome about being a freelancer is you control your time, but that means also you have to be responsible enough to respect your time. But this is actually pretty close to my schedule, to tell you the truth. I usually work in the mornings from like 9 till around 1 or 2 o'clock. I have my afternoons off, and then I work at night from about 5 till 8, and then I have dinner, and then I have my evening off, right? I wouldn't be able to do that if I worked for someone else, right? That'd be pretty challenging. So this factory that I drew over here on the right is to show you, most artists are not capable, quite frankly, of the freelance world. You go to a job for many reasons. Number one, maybe you have a hard time coming up with ideas of what you want to draw and create. Maybe you're not entrepreneurial, right? So you're not going to make money sitting at home doing your own job. So what you do is you get a job. And I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been an entrepreneur in many different businesses, and I've also worked for other companies, mostly as an art director, right? And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. When you go to work, somebody else is helping you control your time, right? There's a producer that says, hey, Mike, you know what? We need you to finish art directing on this character design. We need it Friday by 12 o'clock, right? So I have somebody telling me that. I also know that I'm going to work. Usually in the entertainment industry, work is like 10 to 6, 10 to 7 o'clock. It's not like you have to be there at 9. I have been at jobs at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, just depends on what's happening. But somebody else is like managing that. Now, when I'm running my own business again, it's all on me, right? I'm managing the schedule, right? I'm working with Swenley and Mattesi and all the people that we're mentoring. What do those schedules look like, right? So very different mindset. I guess what I'm getting at here is be aware of you, be aware of like, what kind of artist are you? Are you someone who has the capacity to be entrepreneurial if you're going to go freelance? Do you have the capacity to control your own schedule and be your own producer or not? Or are you like, hey, first of all, I don't want to work by myself at home, or even through Zoom or something like that. I want to work with a group on a bigger project. And I need somebody to tell me what to do, and I need somebody to control my time. Both are fine. I'm not judging either one of them. I just want you to be aware that there's these two things to manage, Thoughts, Swenley? Hey, there's Mattesi. He's in the chat.
Yeah,
he's like,
still there, guys.
He's shrunken down from here and gone down to the chat.
Yeah, that's an interesting one about, especially the part about respecting your time. That's something that I have, even to this day, I have to constantly discipline myself on, like day by day, because I keep telling myself if I was working for a company, I would indeed respect their time. So how much more should I respect my time, my own business? So, and again, that's another thing that I find that inspiration, just finding some way to inspire yourself to be disciplined, and also I noticed that when I know someone else depends on me, then it's easier for me to be disciplined, than
That's
if
a
it's
good one.
all, yeah, if
Yeah.
it's all for myself. Like if I have mentorships and stuff, I know I have to prepare. It's easy for me to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And yeah, if it is for myself, I really need to intentionally inspire myself to, start and stop when I promised myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great one. Obligation. I would probably not write as many books if I didn't sign a darn contract. you know, like the contract gives me a deadline, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to write this book and it's due in a year. And do I procrastinate on that? Sure. Sometimes I procrastinate. Sometimes life just gets so busy, like this house, that situation I'm in right now. I'm like, I even told the publisher I had to push off one of the books. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get it done on time. I didn't know this house thing was going to happen. It is happening. That's going to push me months and months and months out from where I thought I would be, right, with the deadline of the book. So, things happen. It's okay. It's flexible, but you want to set these goals. And one great way to be inspired is obligation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, being obligated to someone else. That is probably the biggest motivator. So thank you for bringing that up, Swinley. I mean, when you go to do a job, now people are expecting you to show up at work, right? You don't show up at work, and there's a consequence. It's called getting fired, right? So all of a sudden, that's enough of for some, I think, a fear tactic of I don't want to get fired. It's important, right? And it's this whole cycle, right? It's like, oh, well, I bought these things. Now I'm in debt. I need my job. I can't not go to my job because I have this debt. I have to pay for these things, right? So there's this constant, like, little sort of rat race that we all kind of get stuck in, and I don't want to go into a whole giant thing on finances and the rat race and all, but keep your bills down so you're not as afraid about worrying about losing your job or not. You're in control and you want to go to your job because you love your job, not because you have bills to pay. But obligation is a big deal. I have to say, big motivator. And that usually comes from fear as well of getting fired, right? But that's not why you want to go to work. You want to go to work because you love what you do and you love working with the people that you work with, right? Let's see. I'm just looking here quick. Let's see. Shad said, yeah, I'm kind of feeling desperate. I'm feeling I'm not being productive. Also drawing from my shoulders slowed a lot of my workflow. Does it get tiring to always go by the schedule? Don't you want to change things up? Yes, I do. Yes. I think part of the maturity of it is, getting into a schedule. But when you control it, right? So I can change my schedule if I want. There's sometimes a night where maybe I don't feel well, or I'm like, you know what, I just can't focus tonight. I'm going to cancel these meetings for the next couple of days. I need a break. I get burned out. I'm human too, like I work a lot. And there's times where I'm just like not in it. I know I can't focus. I'm getting frustrated. I know when I start feeling sort of resentful or frustrated, I'm like, I need a break. I'm feeling burned out. I'll take a break. Or like you said, change things up. I totally agree. And that is part of the frustration of having such a well-oiled schedule in the first place. So yes, I do agree. Let's see. I also want to make a graphic novel and maybe turn it into animation or video game. Yeah, I think those are great, huge long-term goals. Matinjay says last same thing. Team is telling you. The thing is, if you have a giant goal to bullseye, then you have to work giant. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go on to the next segment here. Hope this made sense. There's a lot of things we talked about here. Who are you? Are you a freelancer or not? And if you are, you need to be more entrepreneurial and know how to define your schedule, be your own producer. Could hire a producer too, but then obviously you're losing some of your income. Or do you need to go to work? Be aware of that. Then you're handing over that control to somebody else, okay? And by the way, I think the hardest thing to do is when you have a full-time creative job and you have a goal of your own, because it's tough, man. I've been there. You come home from the full-time job, you eat dinner. I know for me, all I want to do after that is watch TV. Like, I'm tired. I've been working 8 or 10 hours. I come home, but I want to write this book. On the anatomy book, for instance, the schedule was closing in. I had a lot of stuff going on in my family at the time that was keeping me busy. And the only way I got that book done was putting it into my weekend. So I had no weekends to myself for like 4 months, 5 months, something like that. I just worked like 16 hours a weekend to get that book done and try to get it done on time, because my middle of the week, I couldn't do it. I could not focus at night on it. I was too tired. So that was my weekends, right? Okay, let's see. So this one, later, Swanley and I are going to share with you a bunch of books that we've read. By no means all of them. I'm just going to share with you some of them, the ones I've read over the last couple of years. But one thing that's come up, I know, in the books I've read and in articles, is every day is better than one day. I hear this from my daughter's teachers pretty often too, especially in math. Ironically, they mention this quite a bit, which is it's better that you practice every day for a few hours than binge work, right? So I get asked this in mentorship quite a bit as well. It's better if you can say, hey, every day I'm going to put in an hour or 3 hours of drawing time. So you're building upon your successes. You want to build up a rhythm. You want to build up your schedule. You're building upon the day prior and your brain and your body, your muscle memory. You're learning things more quickly that way. If you do nothing all week and then binge for 15 hours on working, first of all, which is difficult for anyone to have focus for something like 15 hours, it's not the same. It's just not the same. You might make some headway because of the amount of time, but chances are a lot of that will be lost and forgotten over 6 days' time. It's also, I think, what hurts people on the internet. You watch Google, maybe you binge watch for a while, or even if you go to drawingforce.com, I always say drawingforce.com is not netflix.com. You're not going to learn by binge watching it. You need to sit down and actually do the work. And the best way to do that is daily, so when it comes to these daily warm-ups, you want to find a time every day that you can actually work and set it up every day and respect that time as you being your own producer and sit down and do it. You just got to do it, right? How's it work for you, Swanley? Do you have certain times where you have spare time, or how do you control your calendar?
Yeah, first of all, I would say indeed that statement is so true, and it's based on our brain works. Once you get new information into your brains and you don't do anything with it, I think it's for about 48 hours, like the information literally disappears from your brain. You have to repeat it, I think, at least 7 days, and then there are cycles of 7 days and 21 days for it to really take root in your brain. So it's so important to indeed, like you say, to practice consistently on a daily basis. And yeah, since I learned that, I've been doing that. I know that if I get at least 3 to 4 hours of practice on a daily basis, it's good, and it also relieved a lot of pressure from me because I've often heard the advice of you have to draw 10 to 12 hour days, to
Right.
improve. But once I learned how the brain works, I was like, that's not true at all, because I mean, if you can, it's great. It's a bonus, but the consistency is more important than the amounts.
It's just like working out, right? If you want to, gain muscle mass and you go and do a crazy day on Saturday for 15 hours and burn yourself out, that's just going to disappear over the week. If you really want to get stronger, you do a little bit every day. It's, going back to Anthony Robbins, which I think I mentioned in a prior video, he had a line in there. It's another one that always stays in my head, which is repetition is the mother of skill, right? And I think repetition is the mother of everything, quite frankly. What we're really getting at here is habit forming. And as Swanley said, what I've read many times is around 20 to 21 days is where you finally start really getting into a routine and a habit. So you've really got to try to set yourself up for at least 3 weeks of doing something for you to finally swallow that pill, and make that new habit start to get some claws in you, to start grounding you down into that particular thing. So if you can just get through 3 weeks, put it on the calendar and literally mark off on your calendar, 3 hours here, 3 hours here, 2 hours, whatever it is that you set up, just get through the 3 weeks, and chances are once you get past the hurdle of 3 weeks, it'll start becoming a little more normal for you to have this thing happen in your life every day. It's very easy to fall out of habit too. So it's the kind of thing you have to stay on top of. There was a couple of questions here I want to respond to. Let me see here. Sanjana was asking, how do you set priorities? Yeah, that's great. That's one piece we haven't talked about yet. You know, you have your calendar, but how do you hierarchically set priorities, right? Hierarchy. That's a great, I think honestly, it's just such a personal question, right? I think you have to decide what is most important to you. And that comes along with setting up the schedule, you know? I mean, it's literally just as important, right? It is what defines your schedule. What is the most important thing to you? And how much of your time every week and every month and every year does that thing occupy? So I think that's great. Thank you for bringing it up, because I wasn't thinking about that. And that hooks up hand in hand with the schedule, right? Is to prioritize. I want to work towards being a freelancer. My small goal, I guess, is reading 4 chapters of your book. That's a good one. I've been trying to plan for a while. This video is really helpful. Every day in my journal, I write how many hours I drew for the day and how many beers I drank, trying to keep drawing hours to beers, more hours than beers. That sounds good. But I see you do tons of things, not just drawing, concept art, traditional painting, mentoring, etc. How do you not procrastinate? To me, it's just, I know I've got long-term goals, you know, and this is by Knuckle Last. Those longer term goals are what drive me to work from day to day to day. And I am obligated to a lot of people, not only you guys, but to my family, right? So my obligation as father and husband in the house that I'm in keeps me motivated. If I was a bachelor and I wasn't teaching and doing everything else, I'd probably be playing video games all day long, quite frankly. Anyone else wonder how Matunje does it? I know I do. I want to add, it's also good to be kind on yourself. Sometimes 4 hours of practice is not, yeah, we're going to talk about that, Daniel. Sometimes 4 hours is not a good idea. I totally agree. Atomic Habit is a really good book. Yep, it's on my list. We're going to be talking about that later today. All right, so let's keep moving forward. Seems like everyone's on track with the conversation, same space. So what we're leaving here with this slide is a little bit every day is better than putting a lot in one day. It really does not work that well, okay? Okay. Next one, talking about focus, right? So I think it was Daniel that just brought this up. Stretch your focus time. I get asked about this all the time. And the younger the student that comes in, especially for mentorship, the more they get shocked about 10 minutes isn't enough, right? No, 10 minutes is not enough, right? If you do want to learn how to draw or do anything and get better at it, it takes time. So the more time you put in general, the faster you'll get there. But there is a breaking point. I think there is such a thing as too much time. Swami mentioned this earlier as well. Sometimes overworking 10 hours in one day is not great either. So this is a very personal thing again. It's like, how much focus do you have? You really have to know when you're working and it is not productive, right? It's not successful. You're burned out, tired, angry, frustrated, whatever it may be. The challenge, I think, here, or the thing I really want to talk about, is there is a way of trying to stretch that out. And it takes you being a little bit producer-like for yourself, but kind of feel it out at the beginning. You know, when you sit down and work, how long can you work successfully and be really productive and focused before you start getting distracted? Is it 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Is it half an hour? For some people, it's 2 hours, 3 hours, right? They can really sit down and focus on something. If it's not, let's say it's 15 minutes, then I suggest, you work the 15 minutes and then take like a 5-minute break and then sit down and do 15 minutes again and literally time yourself, get a little bit more scientific about it, track it, and then push it out. The next day, say, instead of 15 minutes, I'm going to go for 20 minutes. And the next day, 25 minutes, and then 30 minutes. If you get to 30 minutes, maybe you extend the break a little bit longer. It's, a 10 or 15 minute break, but you're working for half an hour, right? You want to be able to track that. I promise you, if you go through that over time, before you know it, you'll be able to sit down for an hour and like really work focused for an hour's worth of time or 2 hours. Look, Swenley and I were talking about this before we came on. Most of us have the ability to sit down and watch a darn Avengers movie for 2.5, 3 hours, or Lord of the Rings, right? These are long movies. So you have the ability to focus if you want to focus, okay? It's just having the will and desire to focus. And if you have a hard time and your brain's going off somewhere, you got to figure out why. Like maybe the thing you're working on, you really don't want to work on, right? And if you don't want to work on it, again, is it a fear thing or is it just you're not interested in it? Then maybe you're doing the wrong thing. Be aware of that too, right? So find out why. Typically, when you really love what you're doing, focus is not a problem, right? That's when we get into that term in the zone or in flow, mindfulness. When you get in that state of mind, time disappears, right? Next thing you know, it's like 5 hours later, and you're like, damn, where did my day go? Like, I've been working on this sculpture for 5 hours and my whole night disappeared. It's 2 a.m. I was supposed to go to sleep at midnight. And it's 2 a.m. and you're working on this thing. That's awesome, right? Like, that's what you want. You want to find these things that you enjoy so much that you actually do lose track of time. That's being in the zone, right?
Yeah, that's a
Finally,
good one.
yeah.
Like that's exactly the problem that I have. Like the problem that I have is not procrastination, is stopping myself from drawing, because I love it so
Right,
much. Like I
right.
schedule like 2 hours of gesture drawing every morning, but sometimes I find myself going 4 hours and it passes like nothing. So if you really enjoy what you're doing, I mean, focus, like you said, shouldn't be a problem. Like this should be something that you want to do. You
Yeah.
should be wanting to draw. And I think that's also Mitunde's secret. He loves what he does. So it's easy to maneuver all these things because you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, you got to find the passion, right? I mean, man, that's a whole other conversation. But if you love what you do, time's going to go by with no problem. In fact, as Swanley said, you'll have to budget when to stop and respect that because you have to go food shopping, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I have nothing to eat. I'm supposed to go to the supermarket and I just ate in an hour of the time I was supposed to go do that. I have nothing to eat tonight, right? So that's where you want to be, right? You want to get to a place where it's the flip side. It's not difficult to sit down and work. It's difficult to stop, right? Because you just love it so much.
Yeah.
Let me just check here real quick. Give yourself some break incentives. Yeah, incentives. So Sanjana mentioned incentives. I can't tell you how many books I've read on, I call it brainwashing, but it's like, how do you condition yourself to get yourself to do the things you want to do and not the things you don't? And so many books out there prove like negative reinforcement does not work as well as positive. I don't know if that's true or not, because I've also read books where like obligation could be a negative thing. That'll motivate you, right? Usually fear, sadly, is a huge human motivator, more than what you like. You usually work more off of what you're scared of or don't want than what you want. Um, but I think it's good to do both. So if you can turn something into, I have to do this because I'm scared of this thing happening if I don't. And I have to do this because this is what I want in my life. And I really like this. Then you have the negative and the positive coming together to reinforce you, to condition you to get done what you want to do. I think that's the best of both worlds. So my recommendation would be try to get them both in there. What are you worried about? What does life look like if you don't do this thing? And what does life look like if you do this thing? Right. So you got both situations helping condition you, basically. Okay. Onward. Let's see. So try and stretch your time, right? The goal here is you want to be productive for longer periods of time as much as you can, right? Without killing yourself. The goal here is, I'm not asking you to be a robot, right? Um, so with that time, I think there's a level of focus needed. It doesn't mean you're doing a lobotomy and brain surgery, for 15 hours, right? It doesn't have to be that, or even 3 hours. Sometimes the work is more labor intensive. It takes more brain power to focus on it. And sometimes it's less, right? When I was at my last job as a creative director, creative art director, um, or concept, I should say, really concept director, um, a lot of the employees would have YouTube on or Netflix while working, And at the beginning, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good idea. Like everybody's production level is going to go like through the floor. But nothing changed. So I think as long as, if I gave my reports the opportunity to relax and, have something running in the background and work and the work got done, I had no problem with it. As long as I saw that they were still as productive and things were getting on time, go for it. And my boss was fine with it. I brought it up with him. He's like, I'm fine with it. I'm like, okay, I'm fine with it as well. And even I did that, but I have to say very rarely, because usually for me, my job was like, I had to focus. So be aware. Sometimes you need to, for me, sometimes I need everything shut off. Nothing can be on. I need total silence. Like I have to really focus on something. And sometimes I can have a movie running while I'm working, right? It depends on what the job is. Like if you're painting something or color filling, you can easily have TV or something on because it doesn't take much brain power. But if you're like trying to come up with a new idea and you're writing and you're trying to focus on the drawing, you're trying to fix things or figure out what's wrong, you can't have the TV on. When I worked at Disney or I was in games, most of the time what I did is I would have on music, and it was typically soundtracks. I found that if I had music on that had lyrics, I could not focus. I would like the lyrics, creep their way into my head. And next thing I know, I'm like singing the song in my mind, and then it would distract me from what I was doing. Right. So to me, there's these tiers of like silence, soundtracks or instrumental music, music with lyrics, podcasts with people talking, and then visuals kick in, right? It's like all of a sudden the TV is on. Maybe the TV is on, but the audio is off. So it's something I can glance at every so often, but it's not really that distracting. And then last but not least is something is on and the audio and the visual is on, and it's that distracting, and it's okay because what I'm doing takes like no effort at all, right? So be aware of your effort level compared to the distraction level, Any thoughts?
Yeah, I experienced it in the same way indeed. Like, for example, when I have to come up with ideas, at the very beginning of a project, I have to generate ideas. I most of the time need total silence, and whereas when I'm further down with the project and have to like clean up drawings or color stuff, I often put podcast or something educational in the background so I can use my time effectively. So yeah, it needs depends on how much brain power the task requires.
Yeah, when I was just thinking like, when do I listen to podcasts? I typically listen to podcasts or something educational when I'm exercising, because the thing I'm doing is physical. It doesn't take any of my like mental activity. It's like taking a shower, right? Like just a physical thing. I don't have to think about it. So I'll have my phone or a notebook, or because I write lots of notes when I'm listening to stuff I want to learn, so I can check back on it later and then put it into action and try to actually use it in my life, instead of just listening and let it go. I hate when things could just go in one ear and out the other, and I don't use it, But it's usually physical time is when I learn, So I manage those two things at one time. When I'm in conversations and I'm teaching, of course, everything is off. I'm in I'm in the conversation. I'm teaching. That's my focus. If I'm in a one-on-one with Swenley or Matunje, everything's off. That's my focus of attention. I can't be doing other things while I'm talking to somebody, right? That takes way too much attention. So just keep in mind, the note to this whole thing is there's different levels of it. Be aware of your attention level compared to your distraction level. Sometimes if your attention level doesn't have to be that low, the distraction can be high, it's okay. And sometimes it's the opposite. You've got to shut everything off. And it sounds like it's really obvious, but I know I've done it. I've seen even my kids do it. Sometimes they have a really focused thing, the distraction level's high. And then guess what? That thing that could take you half an hour takes you 4 hours to complete, because you are so distracted and you cannot work until those things are off, you see? So you could do that, but it'll take you a lot longer, much longer, So just keep that, stay aware of that. All right, let's see, what's our next subject here? Okay, so we finally get to the daily routines, right? This is bringing us all the way down to the actual drawing itself. So these are the ones that we describe on drawingforce.com that we prescribe to all of the standard members of Premium and the mentees. Everyone goes through the same process. What I tried to do here specifically was put them in an order of experience of discipline, right? So in general, we have students start with skating, right? And then we go from skating to the roller coaster to primitives to force blobs, so they're going into shape. And then finally, even in going into drawing figures from imagination, right? So that encompasses all the stuff from 1 through 4, right? You have to really get from 1 through 4 to get to number 5 in the first place. And every one of them does different things. The skating and the roller coaster, at that stage in the game, you are trying to connect your eyes, your brain, and your hand, right? We're trying to get you basically in a state of flow, right? It's focus, right? So those tools are there for focus. I'm trying to have you understand the physics of drawing line, and that you're learning this new language with line, and that you're starting to control that line better, right? So, and that takes, some people snap like right into that, and some people it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get into the zone. It just depends on what kind of life you've had before you've gotten to our website. Have you been somebody who's always distracted, or you've been somebody who's really focused, right? So very, very important, because like I said, here what we're doing is we're actually going through getting in the zone. And then that gets more complex, right? You start moving on to primitives. Even friends of mine and people that I've managed, primitives is a pretty normal daily routine exercise. I have to say, I had a guy last year I was teaching who's a pretty big name in Wizards of the Coast, did a lot of the cards for, what was the name of that game? Help me out here.
Magic the Gathering?
Yes, for Magic, thank you. So he did a lot of illustrations for the Magic the Gathering cards. You know, he said every day he practiced primitives for like 15, 20 minutes. One of my friends named Mike was an art director at one of the places I art directed. Now he's a board artist at Pixar. Every morning, half an hour, primitives, right? Like that was his thing. And, you know, I got to tell you, super powerful, right? He knew how to draw structure and form really, really well. You just do it every day and you start catching your mistakes. You just get more and more acclimated to what looks right until it becomes normal. We are all capable of becoming great at all these things. You have to put in the commitment, right? Repetition is the mother of skill. You got to get to this place of the repetitiveness of doing it over and over. Is it exciting? No, I'm not saying it's exciting. It's the non-excitement that gets you through it. You just got to practice to get better. Gymnasts practice every day. You want to become an Olympic gymnast? They're doing it every day. They're on the mat, they're on the floor, they're getting up early, right? They're chalking up their hands, getting out there, doing their workouts. It's not necessarily exciting. You know, it's just going through the routine, right? Your body needs to learn the machinations, you know, the repetitiveness that your brain and body need to go through to make this stuff easier, right? Sometimes those things are going to be faster, sometimes they're slower, but you just got to do it, right? You got to go through the repetition or it doesn't happen, okay? So after that actually comes the whole force blob situation, right? So with those force blobs, we're talking about shape design. It starts combining force and the skating and the roller coaster with the primitives and form, right? So you want to get all that stuff to work together, okay? And then last but not least, the most complex that I try to get my students to is drawing figures from imagination, right? So now you're putting together the primitives, you're putting together force blobs, and you start learning how to draw figures in three-dimensional space in awesome poses, dynamic poses that are still rhythmic. They got good silhouette and all that stuff's going on. All of these are great daily routines. How much of it should you do? That's a great question. I would say typically a daily routine will last anywhere from like maybe 15 minutes to half an hour. So let's say you're going to draw for 2 hours every day. If you had a 2-hour schedule, I would say, you know, doing the sketches for 15 minutes to half an hour every day, that's pretty good. You know, the routine, that's a pretty good like warm up. The routine might be figure drawing. And in that figure drawing, you might have, you know, a general routine for figure drawing. Here, let me write this down so it's not as random, right? So a general routine for figure drawing is usually something like, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes, right? So 10 minutes, here, let me make this darker. 10 minutes of like 30-second drawing, right? So that would be 20 sketches right there, 20 drawings, right? And then you might want to, after those first 10 minutes, you might do another 10 minutes of like 1-minute drawings, right? That gives you another 10 drawings, right? And then after that, you could move on to like 2 minutes, 2-minute, let's put 5-minute in here. Sometimes I'll do 7s and you might bump up to 10. Depending on what you're learning, you could even go up to like a 20-minute, right? So this is a very, very generic figure drawing session, right? This is what I would run when I was in teaching, you know, in schools. I'm hoping this is a precursor, hopefully, for things to come. Like I said, I'm moving. I'm going to actually have a studio space. I'm hoping to have live sessions with you guys where we will go through a scenario like this with a model, with a real model, and me there with the model drawing. So that's one of my goals for the future, right? For hopefully before the end of this year. So we'll go through a setup like this, right? So usually this gets bumped up then to 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, right? And so on. So you can see within 20 minutes here, you'd have 5-minute poses, you'd have this, here you'd have 10, Here you'd have 3, you'd go to 21 minutes. Here you have 2 drawings and 1 drawing. And this is 20, 40, 60. So there's an hour, 20, 40, 50, 60. So that's 2 hours, right? So this equals 2 hours. So 2 hours, and maybe prior to this, you take another 15 minutes to a half an hour, right? To 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes of warm up. If you want to learn how to do figure drawing, this is an awesome schedule, right? Here it is. You all want to know what like a good daily routine would be? Here it is. If you're not up to doing like sculpting yet, then I would say you can probably cut this off. Down here, I would say, is when you're really dealing with like the sculpting aspect of things. If you're rendering, you're trying to learn some simple tone, then you can bring that in. You know, the longer poses is where you don't need them if you're working with just force or even force shape. It's form and rendering that lead you to the longer time periods. You could easily throw whatever you want down here as well. I usually only go up to a 20-minute pose. You can easily say, you know what, I want to do a 1-hour pose, right? Some of the homework assignments that I hand out to students, what I consider 7 minutes at the beginning might not be 7 minutes for you. It might be a half an hour drawing, right? And we want to be aware of that. One of the things I've noticed I have to stay on top of when I'm teaching mentoring is I make the assumption that I look at a drawing and I think, that would probably take 7 minutes. And then I ask the student, they're like, oh, that took me 30 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, that's not a 30-minute drawing. Let's figure out how to knock that down in time. It's usually either lack of confidence that is making them draw slower, or it's just purely the learning of like, I don't know what template I'm following. Where am I supposed to go? What am I looking at, right? You're learning a lot of new stuff, and that takes more time, and I get it, you know? But this is a pretty good routine, and the warm-up is this, right? Which is this, right? So it's this, right? So here's your warm-ups. This attaches itself to the figure drawing routine, which is down here, right? Fig drawing. So most of you might have shown up today for this answer right here. This is pretty much the guts of what I would recommend on a daily basis. You got 2 to 2.5 hours of work every day. 3 hours would be amazing, right? That's where you want to try to get to, okay? All right, we're almost out of time here, and Swenley and I want to share with you some of the books that we recommend. So Swenley, I have yours up here first. Do you want to kind of give us a quick overview on these?
Yeah, let's start with the one at screen right, the 80-20 principle. And that book speaks about finding 20% of the activities that produce 80% of results. You know, so in drawing, I would say that those are the fundamentals. You know, in force drawing, you have force, form, and shape. You know, so you really want to put your effort in these basic aspects because they determine the rest. You know, again, they're called fundamentals for a reason. They're the foundation upon which everything else is built. You know, like students get surprised when I tell them one of the things I practice the most is force basics. Like I realize the more I want to move forward, the more I want to advance as an artist, the more important the basics become, because the advanced stuff is simply an advanced application of the basics, you know. So I find myself going back and delving deeper into the very basic stuff of force drawing. So this book helped me to realize what I should be putting my efforts into, you know, to get the most results. And then we have the middle one, time management from the inside out, which basically speaks about how you should find or how you should create your schedule based on you as an individual, you know, like learning how you function and how you think, and like what times of the day you're most productive perhaps, and design your schedule out of that. And then the last one, how to learn, is it gives good insights into how our brain works, like things like working memory, and it explains like how synapses work and all that kind of stuff. So it really helped me to because I was looking for books on how to teach. You know, I was like, okay, I want to like become a better teacher. Let me see if I can get some insights on that. And I found a lot of books that are like specific to like classroom teaching, you know, like in school. And then I said, okay, let me maybe look at it from the point of view of the student, because if I understand how someone learns, then it's easy for me to like tailor my teaching towards that. and this book was amazing in doing that. So I highly recommend it.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I don't have any of those, so I'll have to check them out. Man, I have read a lot of books, I have to say. I'm going to share some of them with you. Some of them I'm not even going to be able to give you the insight anymore because this is books that I've read over the last 5 years, but I know they're on my reading list. And if they're there, they're probably pretty good books. So I'm just going to share with you some of these. Some of them I do remember. I've read 2 books on habit. One of them is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Ironically, I don't know if that's real, his last name or not, but how ironic is that, right? So Atomic Habits, I think what we're talking about here today in general is habit, right? So you want to read books on habit. How do you create habit? What are the habits that you have? What are the habits you want to break? How do you break them? It's usually about like switching something out, right? Learning to break a habit is about transition to get to the new habit. And this book goes over like how to do that. And that's why it says like tiny changes, remarkable results. It's about transition, moving from one habit into another one, right? The 5-second rule. I have to say, this one is overkill in that it basically says, anytime you want to do something or procrastinate, give yourself the 5 seconds to take a breather, to then go and do that particular thing instead of giving yourself any reason to like back out of it. And that's almost all I remember from this. I just remember it was very repetitive. It was like same thing over and over again. I guarantee you can probably just look up the 5-second rule and figure out pretty quickly like its main meaning. But most of the book, it was just examples, lots of examples of things in this woman's life and Mel's life about how she used it. The mastery book at the end, I think is a great book. It goes into different stories of people who became masters in their fields. And Robert Greene, the author, does a great job of writing about that. I have to say, as a pat on my own back here, a lot of the stuff he talks about are things that I teach in mentorship. A lot of the same skills are in there. So I guess that's why I like it. It's a good book. I agree with that book like wholeheartedly. I think it's excellent. Everyone should get this mastery book. Yeah, great book. And then last but not least, let me knock this up to 100. And not least by any means, I grabbed very quickly books. I could probably talk to you for 2 hours about books that I've read over the last 20 years. These are all been the last like maybe 5 years. Another book on habit, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. Also pretty good book on habit. Typically when I buy a book on a particular topic, I don't buy one book, I buy a few books on that because I also like to see where the crossovers are in that subject and where they're not. And usually the crossovers that are consistent are the ones that are really awesome because they've all found very similar beliefs that are probably more accurate or more true than the sort of outliers, Last but not least is this other book. It's slightly off topic, but I thought I would throw it in here. It's called A Whole New Mind, Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. So for all of us here today, we're typically right-brainers. It's the creative people of the world. So this is an exciting book of how we as creative people will rule the world. That's already, in a sense, kind of happening. I think there is a big struggle out there right now between creative and like data analytics, right? Data analytics is a big deal out there. I felt this struggle firsthand when I was working at Zynga. It's a very data-driven organization. And yet I was on the creative side of things. So there was always this kind of healthy friction between data and creative. It's like, what's this marketing art going to be about? And data comes in and says, well, people don't like this, this, and this, and they like this, this, and this. And it's up to us to try and fulfill creatively the parameters around that kind of data information, or even to argue and say, what if we try something that's not in the data, right? No one expected Star Wars to be a big hit, right? Everyone thought it was a joke, and look what happened, right? I doubt some data analysts would have been sitting there saying, I think a science fiction soap opera is what's going to break the world open creatively. Nobody would have known, right? So you want to be careful about that. And this author, Daniel Pink, who, by the way, also has a talk on what's that called? Masters Academy. It's like the class where they have all professionals from different industries come in. There's like movie stars and directors and so on. I have an account over there. Daniel Pink is on there right now. And he talks about I forget what his class was about, but he's on there. He's a good speaker. And I just love this book. I think why do I love this book? I love this book because I consider myself part of the right brainer revolution. It's like being aware on how powerful creativity is. So I highly recommend that too. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed today. Be aware of who you are. What kind of artist are you? Do you want a job in a place where someone else is helping you control your time or not? How are you going to control your time? Time is the most precious thing that you have, right? You want to get good at stretching how long you could be focused for, right? You don't want to overstretch it. You don't want to understretch it. We talked about something that you could do with drawing and daily warmups and what like a good 2.5 to 3 hour cycle can look like for you. You've learned today that it's better to work a little bit every day than it is to binge at the end. We've given you some books to read as well and some personal stories from Swenley and I on the topic. So hopefully something has come out of today that will help you become a more productive and hopefully happier artist as well. You don't want to just be productive and hate it all, but try to find what you love and be super productive at the same time. Anything else you want to add, Swenley, before we close up?
Yeah, since we close with books, I think it's worth emphasizing the importance of education. Art is part cognitive and part motor skill. Like the motor skill is the practicing and practicing and practicing, but the cognitive part is as important. Like you see us share here today, a lot of these things we learn from books. So I also want to encourage you guys to read. Find subjects that you're interested in, like how to manage your time or how to plan. There are books, great books on all this stuff. So just also schedule time to read.
I was just going to say that. Schedule time to go read and learn to improve yourself. That's a great thing to put on your calendar. Maybe every day you put half an hour, 15 minutes right down to sit and focus and read. That's your time, for you to become smarter. Yeah. I think that's a good place to close. All right. So thank you everyone for coming. We will see you next Friday. Hopefully Mrityunjay will be here with us in visual person versus the chat. And we will see you all next Friday for hopefully, again, a very educational and inspiring Force Friday. Go find Albert. He's still out there. Somebody was asking. He's still waiting to be found. So we will see you guys in 7 days. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.